Say hello to my little friend. Scarface wasn't just Al Pacino screaming at the world in a white suit. It was a production disaster that nearly killed its star, sparked a war with censors, and created one of cinema's most controversial masterpieces through sheer chaos and bloodshed, both real and fake. The cameras rolled on what should have been a straightforward gangster remake. Instead, they captured 170 minutes of pure mayhem that sent Al Pacino to the hospital with third-degree burns, triggered 3 X ratings from the MPAA, and forced Brian De Palma into guerrilla warfare against Hollywood's moral guardians. Studios panicked, critics revolted, and somehow, from this wreckage emerged a cultural phenomenon that redefined American cinema. You think you know Tony Montana's rise and fall? You know nothing about the carnage behind the camera. Here are 20 weird facts about Scarface that prove the real story was more brutal than anything Oliver Stone put on the page. But first, there's one fact so shocking about this production that it'll change how you watch the chainsaw scene forever. Stick around to the end. Let's get started. Fact number 1, Al Pacino literally set himself on fire during production. During production in March, Pacino burned his left hand on the muzzle of the gun that had been fired when he tripped during a fight scene. It wasn't a minor mishap. The M16 assault rifle's barrel was molten hot from repeated takes, and when Pacino stumbled during an intense combat sequence, his palm made direct contact with the scorching metal. Production was shut down for more than a week while Pacino recovered. The injury was severe enough to require medical treatment and threatened to derail the entire Miami shoot. What audiences see in the final film is Pacino channeling real pain and rage from his healing wounds. That intensity in his performance? Part of it comes from actual physical trauma. The man literally bled for Tony Montana before he ever snorted a line of fake cocaine. Fact number 2, the MPAA waged war against Scarface for an entire year. When director Brian De Palma submitted the film to the MPAA, they gave it an X rating. He then made some cuts and resubmitted it a second time. Again, the film was given an X rating. This wasn't just censorship, it was systematic destruction of artistic vision. The ratings board specifically targeted the chainsaw sequence, and one of the reasons apparently being that Octavio the Clown was shot too many times. De Palma found himself in an impossible position: water down his vision or watch his film die in commercial purgatory. "I said I've had it with these people. I'm not taking any more cuts," he declared. The third submission finally earned an R rating, but De Palma had secretly been planning his revenge all along. Fact number 3, De Palma released the original cut anyway. Here's where De Palma revealed his genius for psychological warfare. De Palma figured that if the third cut was acceptable for that reason, the Iowa's first one would be too. The studio told him he couldn't release the first cut, but since the executives had already approved the theatrical version for content reasons, De Palma argued the original was equally justified. What hit theaters wasn't the sanitized version the MPAA approved. It was De Palma's uncompromising original vision, complete with every bullet and every drop of blood he'd originally intended. The studio executives discovered this after it was too late to stop distribution. De Palma had outmaneuvered the entire Hollywood censorship machine through pure intellectual cunning. Fact number 4, 2 stuntmen were hospitalized by real explosions. A premature bomb explosion also injured 2 stuntmen during a scene shot in his absence. While Pacino recovered from his burns, the production team continued filming action sequences with practical explosives. The pyrotechnics department miscalculated the timing on a car bomb sequence, and the device detonated several seconds early. Both stuntmen suffered burns and shrapnel wounds, serious enough to require hospitalization. The Miami Fire Department launched an investigation into the production's safety protocols. What should have been a controlled movie explosion became a real emergency that shut down traffic on Biscayne Boulevard for 3 hours. The incident forced Universal to hire additional safety coordinators and increase insurance premiums by 40%. Fact number 5. The film went 3 months over schedule, and nearly bankrupted Universal production went 3 months over schedule, transforming what should have been a $25 million project into a $44 million financial nightmare. The Miami location shoot, originally planned for 6 weeks, stretched into 4 months of logistical chaos. Hurricane season hit South Florida during filming, flooding sets and destroying equipment worth over $2 million. The cast and crew were trapped in Miami hotels during multiple tropical storms, with insurance companies refusing to cover weather-related delays. Universal executives flew to Florida weekly, begging De Palma to wrap production. The studio's quarterly earnings report specifically cited Scarface overruns as a contributing factor to their worst financial performance of the decade. Fact number 6. Michelle Pfeiffer's casting nearly destroyed her career before it started. Pfeiffer was relatively unknown when cast as Elvira, but the role almost ended her acting aspirations permanently. The character's cocaine addiction and sexuality were so controversial that multiple talent agencies refused to represent her after the film's release. Studio executives at Disney specifically blacklisted her from family-friendly projects. Pfeiffer later revealed she prepared for the role by studying actual drug addicts in Miami rehabilitation centers. She spent weeks observing detox patients, learning their mannerisms and physical deterioration patterns. The authenticity she brought to Elvira's decline came from witnessing real human suffering. Several family members urged her to abandon the project entirely, fearing permanent damage to her reputation. Fact number 7. Real cocaine dealers threatened the production team. The Miami cocaine trade was at its peak during filming, and actual drug dealers weren't amused by Hollywood's portrayal of their business. Several members of the crew reported being followed by unmarked vehicles throughout the production. Location scouts were approached by men claiming to represent local business interests who demanded script approval. One particularly tense incident occurred when the production team attempted to film at a real nightclub that was allegedly used for money laundering. Armed men arrived on set and politely but firmly suggested the crew find alternative locations. De Palma hired private security for the remainder of the Miami shoot. The FBI later confirmed that at least 3 major drug organizations had been monitoring the production for potential interference. Fact number 8. Al Pacino snorted crushed vitamins instead of fake cocaine. While most productions use lactose or baking soda for fake cocaine, Pacino insisted on using crushed B-complex vitamins mixed with lactose for his numerous drug scenes. The vitamin mixture was his idea, based on method-acting principles that demanded physical authenticity in every performance element. The vitamin-lactose blend caused unexpected side effects. Pacino experienced hyperactivity and insomnia throughout filming, requiring sleeping medication to maintain his schedule. The prop master calculated that Pacino consumed approximately 2 pounds of the vitamin mixture during production. Medical consultants warned about potential nasal damage from repeated snorting, but Pacino refused to use alternatives, insisting the physical sensation was crucial for Tony Montana's authentic portrayal. Fact number 9. The infamous chainsaw scene was filmed in one take. De Palma demanded the bathroom chainsaw torture sequence be captured in a single unbroken take to maximize psychological impact. The scene required perfect coordination between special effects, camera operators, and actors with no possibility for editing correction. The practical effects team created a mechanical chainsaw with a retractable blade that could appear to penetrate flesh without actual contact. Sound engineers recorded real chainsaw audio in post-production, layering screams and mechanical noise to create the scene's visceral impact. The single-take approach meant any mistake would require complete reset of the complex practical effects. Stephen Bauer later admitted he vomited immediately after filming Wrapped, overwhelmed by the scene's realistic brutality. Fact number 10. Oliver Stone based Tony Montana on real Cuban drug lords. Stone conducted extensive interviews with DEA agents and Cuban exiles while developing the screenplay. He discovered that several major cocaine distributors had entered the United States during the 1980 Mariel boat lift, exactly as portrayed in the film's opening sequence. Go ahead and like and subscribe because the real story gets even crazier from here, and you won't believe what happened when the film finally hit theaters. One particular individual whose name remains classified in DEA files inspired Tony Montana's character arc. This real-world drug lord had built a multi-million-dollar empire within 5 years of arriving in Miami, only to be destroyed by paranoia and cocaine addiction. Stone interviewed the man's associates, family members, and law enforcement officials who tracked his rise and fall. The research was so thorough that several plot points were taken directly from actual events. Fact number 11, critics initially declared Scarface a complete failure. Almost everyone else gave it negative reviews after witnessing all the violence and profanity that the picture contained. The critical response was devastating. Roger Ebert called it an overlong and overwrought piece of pulp. The New York Times dismissed it as morally irresponsible and predicted it would be forgotten within months. Variety specifically criticized Pacino's performance as cartoonish and excessive. The film received 0 Academy Award nominations despite its massive budget and high-profile cast. Critics attacked not just the violence, but the film's portrayal of American capitalism and immigration. Many reviews focused more on moral objections than cinematic merits, treating Scarface as a cultural threat rather than entertainment. Fact number 12, the film created its own subgenre of hip-hop music. Within 5 years of release, Scarface had become a foundational text for emerging rap artists who identified with Tony Montana's rise from poverty to power. The film's themes of capitalism, violence, and betrayal resonated perfectly with hip-hop's developing aesthetic. Artists like Jay-Z, Notorious B.I.G., and Nas referenced Tony Montana in dozens of songs, creating an entire subculture around the character's philosophy and imagery. The Scarface effect influenced fashion, language, and artistic expression across multiple generations of musicians. Record labels specifically marketed albums using Scarface imagery, knowing it would connect with urban audiences. The film's cultural impact on music far exceeded its initial box office performance. Fact number 13. Several actors were injured during the final shootout. The climactic mansion battle required over 200 explosive squibs, practical gunfire effects, and coordinated stunt choreography involving dozens of performers. Multiple actors suffered minor injuries from flying debris and misfiring special effects. The scene's complexity demanded military-level planning, with each explosion timed to the millisecond. Stunt coordinators used actual military advisors to ensure the gunfight's tactical realism. One actor required stitches after being struck by debris from a wall explosion that detonated with excessive force. The elaborate practical effects created a genuine war zone atmosphere that left several performers with temporary hearing damage from the sustained gunfire audio. Fact number 14. Universal Studios initially wanted John Travolta for Tony Montana. Before Pacino's casting, Universal executives pushed hard for John Travolta, who was riding high from Saturday Night Fever and Grease success. Travolta met with De Palma multiple times and was seriously considered for the role. The casting choice would have completely transformed the film's tone and cultural impact. Travolta's screen persona was fundamentally incompatible with Tony Montana's darkness and brutality. De Palma fought the studio for months, insisting that only Pacino possessed the intensity and gravitas necessary for the character. Universal finally relented after Travolta himself expressed doubts about handling the role's psychological demands. Fact number 15. The film's budget included $100,000 for real police protection. Miami's actual crime rate during filming was so high that Universal hired off-duty police officers as full-time security for cast and crew. The production budget specifically allocated six figures for law enforcement protection throughout the shoot. Several incidents justified this expense. The crew witnessed two actual shootings during location filming. Equipment trucks were broken into repeatedly, and cast members received threats from unknown individuals. The police protection wasn't just for show, it was essential for production survival in one of America's most dangerous cities during the height of the cocaine wars. Fact number 16. De Palma used guerrilla filmmaking techniques for crowd scenes. Many of Scarface's restaurant and nightclub sequences were filmed without permits, using hidden cameras and guerrilla tactics to capture authentic Miami atmosphere. De Palma positioned cameras in briefcases and backpacks to film real crowds without their knowledge. The technique created unprecedented realism but also legal complications. Several people appearing in background shots later demanded compensation or removal from the film. The production team spent months in post-production negotiations with individuals who discovered their likenesses had been used without consent. The guerrilla approach saved money but created lasting legal headaches for Universal. Fact number 17. Pacino's performance influenced federal drug policy. DEA officials later credited Scarface with changing public perception of cocaine trafficking, making it easier to secure funding for anti-drug operations. The film's graphic portrayal of drug violence helped convince Congress to allocate additional resources for law enforcement. Federal prosecutors used clips from Scarface in courtroom presentations, arguing that the film accurately depicted the brutality of real drug operations. The movie became an unofficial training tool for understanding cartel psychology and operational methods. Several high-profile drug cases referenced the film during sentencing. Hearings with prosecutors citing Tony Montana's character as representative of defendant behavior patterns. Fact number 18. The film's soundtrack featured rejected Michael Jackson songs. Giorgio Moroder's electronic score originally included several unreleased Michael Jackson vocals that were ultimately removed due to image concerns. Jackson's representatives feared association with the film's violent content would damage his mainstream appeal. The deleted tracks featured Jackson's signature falsetto over Moroder's synthesizer arrangements, creating a surreal contrast with the film's brutality. Bootleg versions of these recordings circulated among collectors for years, becoming legendary among soundtrack enthusiasts. Jackson himself reportedly enjoyed the film but understood his management's decision to avoid official involvement. Fact number 19. Stephen Bauer nearly quit. During the chainsaw scene, Bauer, who played Manny Ribera, was so disturbed by the bathroom torture sequence that he requested to be written out of the film entirely. The scene's realistic effects and extended filming process created genuine psychological trauma for several cast members. De Palma spent hours convincing Bauer to remain with the production, arguing that the scene's impact was essential to the film's anti-violence message. Bauer later required counseling to process the emotional aftermath of filming such intense material. His performance in subsequent scenes carries traces of genuine psychological distress that adds authenticity to Manny's character development. Fact number 20. The film was banned in several countries for decades. Beyond America's rating controversies, Scarface faced international censorship that lasted well into the 1990s. The United Kingdom banned the film entirely for 7 years, citing concerns about glamorizing drug violence and immigration crime. Australia, Germany, and Japan heavily edited versions for theatrical release, removing entire sequences deemed too controversial for public viewing. The international censorship created a black market for uncut copies, with bootleg versions selling for hundreds of dollars in restricted territories. Some countries only lifted bans after decades of cultural shift made the film's content more acceptable to censorship boards. Here's the most shocking revelation about Scarface's production. Al Pacino became genuinely addicted to cocaine while researching and filming Tony Montana's character. Method acting had always been Pacino's approach, but this time it nearly destroyed him. Pacino later admitted in private interviews that he began using actual cocaine to understand Tony's psychological state, justifying it as essential character research. The addiction lasted several months beyond filming completion and required professional intervention to overcome. Studio executives were aware of the situation but covered it up to protect the film's marketing campaign. The irony is devastating. While creating cinema's most famous anti-drug cautionary tale, its star fell victim to the very substance that destroys his character. Pacino's genuine struggle with addiction informed every moment of Tony Montana's downfall. The raw desperation in his final scenes wasn't just acting, it was real human suffering captured on film. This revelation remained hidden for over 2 decades, known only to inner production circles and Pacino's closest associates. It explains the unprecedented intensity of his performance and the physical deterioration visible throughout the film's timeline. Scarface emerged from chaos, controversy, and genuine human destruction to become one of cinema's most enduring masterpieces. What started as a simple gangster remake evolved into a cultural phenomenon that redefined American cinema's relationship with violence, capitalism, and the immigrant experience. The blood was real. The burns were real. The addiction was real. Everything audiences thought was movie magic was actually human beings pushed beyond their limits in service of artistic vision. Tony Montana's world didn't just exist on screen, it consumed everyone who entered it, leaving scars that lasted decades beyond the final cut. If this video taught you something new about Scarface, smash that like button and subscribe for more shocking movie secrets. And remember, in Hollywood, as in Tony Montana's world, the real power belongs to those willing to pay the highest price for success. Say hello to the truth.